Thomas Comes Home. Workmen were mending the road near the level crossing. They sectioned off part of it with red and white cones, and a steamroller chuffered importantly. His name was George. He was a most unpleasant steamroller. He grumbled. Said Daisy one day. Said George. Daisy told Percy and Toby what George had said. Toby was worried because he knew George was right. He said, but he wasn't convinced. Daisy was reassured, but she was careful to do nothing to upset George, just in case. Then something happened which made them forget all their worries. Daisy was at the platform when the station master came to talk to her driver. He had a letter in his hand. He said, "The engines were delighted, and so, of course, were Annie and Clarabelle." Daisy told George. He snorted. At last everything was ready. The engines and coaches were to go to the junction, and Daisy was to come last with a special train carrying the station masters, Mr. and Mrs. Kindly, and other important people. Daisy set off happily from the top station. She stopped at the station near the level crossing for her last passengers. There was no sign of George, but some red and white cones lay nearby. 2 of them were even inside the crossing gates. The guard blew his whistle. Tooted Daisy, and she rattled towards the level crossing. As she did so, a gust of wind blew a cone towards her. It disappeared beneath Daisy's wheels. She squealed and stopped. The guard removed the cone, which was now looking very battered. Groaned Daisy, trying to move. The driver got down to look. He told her. Wailed Daisy. Said her driver. A fitter came, and the 3 men worked hard while Daisy stood and fretted. She fumed. But at last the job was done, and Daisy set off with a roar. As they came near the junction, Daisy could see a large crowd on the platform. Suddenly, she heard a cheer. She groaned. Said her driver. Just then, the signal arm dropped, and a familiar whistle sounded in the distance. Thomas came into the station. He looked tired, but he was smiling broadly. He carried the plaque which the National Railway Museum had given him. Said the Fat Controller. Everyone laughed, and the Fat Controller held up his hand. He called,